This is Future Loryn coming to you from the editing room. As promised, this is the second half of the conversation that was started in last week's episode. As usual, I'm Loryn, that is Raphael. We are the Pacheco siblings, and welcome to the Hypercube podcast, a talk show in which two siblings converse about anything and everything. Enjoy the show.
Last time we got to see a DM play Asmodeus, like, come on. When was the last time? It doesn't happen often.
Yeah, and it's like, it's proper Asmodeus, right? It's not even like Avatar Asmodeus.
Yeah.
It's not like cultist summoning a portal, you see Asmodeus' hoof through a portal Asmodeus. This is like, I'm here.
Yeah, totally. He just comes in and, oh my goodness. Well, first off, can we talk about just some of the most profound moments in this? Like, first, let's start, before we get to Asmodeus and like the Calamity happening.
Yeah.
Can we, I think there's a whole conversation we need to have about that finale, but like the penultimate episode, that sort of PvP scene.
Oh, which one was that one?
At the tree, when everyone starts
that's
fighting
the one
each
where
other.
that's Blight, right?
Yeah, where
the
she
blight.
blights the tree.
See, oh my god. Okay.
I know, right? Oh, let's get into it.
Okay.
Like, that was the
Second favorite scene.
Yeah, that scene. Oh my goodness, I love that scene so much, because I was like, whoa, like that was one of the first times that I've seen, first off, that extent of PvP within any kind of multi-session campaign. And like, I believed it, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't feel like this was accessory to the story. I felt like this was happening, and this is part of the story that's being told. Like, these players are genuinely, these player characters are genuinely at each other's throats right now. Like, they're not trying to kill each other, but they're genuinely trying to stop each other, and like they're fighting over it.
And then Double Hold Person comes out, and it's just like,
oh yeah, it's such a unique scenario. You rarely get to see stuff like that.
There's that moment where I keep saying Architect or King because I forget.
I've got the names up. Loryn.
Yeah, because she did it. she caused blight. Yeah, she cast blight. Uh-huh. She caused the sundering of the world tree or whatever that was. The tree of names. That's what they called it.
Basically the world tree.
Yeah, basically the world tree. There's that moment where like once everything goes down. And I think like it's right after like the third time stop or whatever.
yeah. We'll get to that in a sec.
and like everything's turns to normal. It's like, and he's like, all right, everybody, describe how you die, right? And it's like the first thing she does is look towards Sam's character, just like,
oh yeah, loquacious.
And and she like her character realizes that like her ambition did this to the person that she loved. And man, that's like, that is so good.
It hits so hard.
It hits so hard because she's just like, up until that point, there was no consequences.
Yeah. Until that point, it was just pure unbridled ambition. And like,
but then it hurt the people that she loved, and she was like, uh-oh, I done messed up. And it's like, that's a good story, right? It's just like, it's a very simple story of there's a consequence to your actions, right? So it's like, you do something happens in direct retaliation to that. It's just that in this case, it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
So the story is just so big. It's a very simple story, but like the story there is so big, and like what she realizes that like her friends are the ones who are basically taking the brunt of what she did, the one mistake that she made. Not one. She made a lot of mistakes. They're all accumulated. She had made a lot of mistakes that accumulated to this one big thing. Like that was. Oh, that hurt so much, man.
Yeah. Oh, my heart. And like, and the whole thing with the prophecy and Nidus, turning like and making that whole scene possible too, where it was just like, I think Lou Wilson was saying he fully expected him to be one of the like full ambitious characters in the whole thing.
And then you hit me with a prophecy.
Yeah, then you hit me with a prophecy. He was the one person that got to see that, and then all of a sudden he's like, hold on, now my character is second guessing everything.
I love that scene where he's incited by, I think it's incited by Sarah, and the DM says, well, you know when somebody is lying and when someone is telling the truth. And what you see, it's just like, wait, there's a third option?
Yeah, right.
What you see is somebody who desperately wishes that what he's saying is a lie. Or what he's saying is the truth.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa!
That was, Brenton gives some pretty profound, like, insight descriptions and this. Well, and
Yeah.
a lot of that is, he talks about that is part of his process of constant collaboration with the players. Like apparently he talks with everybody and like does like a psych evaluation between sessions essentially to see where all of their characters are at. And so, and to get an understanding of their characters as much as they have one.
That is something that I came away with, like, I think the most important lesson that I came away with, which is something that he and some of the other players talked about during the roundtable stuff, was knowing your characters, like knowing their intentions obviously is super important, but so much to the point where when Brennan starts narrating events and saying like, this is how your character, basically like your character is seeing this, and then them going, I just realized that my character would in this moment feel that way. Of course, obviously, like she had that moment with like the Architect Arcane he was saying something about the prophecy, and it was just like, you hear the prophecy, but like it's in one ear out the other, and she was like, yeah, it would be. Yeah, I don't care about the prophecy. I don't care about. I actually don't care. And then blank. But those moments, I feel like that's where you get that stuff, because I realized, okay, so this is something that I try not to do as a DM. Talk for players.
Yes.
Right? Your character is feeling this. Your character does this.
I try not to do that as well.
He did that a lot.
Yeah,
he did that a lot.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, I was going to say that's something I tried to avoid. And he did it a lot, but it didn't feel out of place in this one. And
because not only was it warranted, but that it was for the betterment of the story, because he was running basically a series of one shots. So just keep going. But that the players were on board with it. Right?
Yes.
Because like it wasn't just like wait, I actually wanted to do okay, well there he goes. It was like, yes, that's exactly what I was gonna do anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
You just got to it faster than I did.
Yeah, you just streamlined the narrative. And I think that's the thing. That's there's like, that's one of those like, that's too powerful a technique kind of things, right? Where it's like, that technique is too powerful. I wouldn't recommend, that is not what they call a beginner technique. That's
not even what they would call a gamer move. That's like leagues high.
Yeah, that's not a pro gamer move. Yeah, that is a very advanced that's a very deadly technique.
Yeah.
Really.
It's super deadly for sure.
Yeah.
That could end a campaign. Yeah. For better or for worse.
But yeah, that is definitely a very advanced DM move. And not one I would for all the aforementioned reasons, not one I would recommend trying unless you have Brennan's process, like unless you have that level of limitations and mutual understanding of the characters. Because again, he has to be so involved for these miniseries. He has to be so involved in everybody's character creation and development processes that like, he's almost on equal footing with the players in terms of like understanding the psychology of their characters. And because they have to be, right? Like they have to be in order to make something this short work that well.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's given me a little bit more like, not confidence per se, but just like understanding that sometimes it is okay to say your character does this because it needs to happen for the story to continue.
Yeah. As long as everyone's on board.
It's obviously not like, well, it's obviously not going to be like extremely important stuff like in Calamity, where it's like you're making like game decision stuff. Like, I'm not going to make any game decision stuff for the characters, but like being able to take characters' agency into my hands as a storyteller, I feel like that's something that I have to be willing to do for the sake of getting the story finished. Because there's just sometimes where like I'll just use, for example, my Labyrinth one shot that I've run several times. I think you've run.
Yeah, I've been through it a few times.
3 times.
3 times, I think.
I think 3 times. I have more plans for that one shot. Next time you play, it's gonna be completely different.
No.
Again, there's just a lot of times where it's like one person will go through a door, and I know that if that door closes, they've split the party because they get transported to a new dimension or to another room, and those rooms don't connect, right? And so it's like, it's been a struggle as a GM to say, okay, now would everybody else like to follow them through that door? Please follow them to the door. Would anybody like to go into the next room and move the story forward? No, you're staying here. The door has a time limit. It's going to close now. And now this party is split. And it's like, I should just be able to say, okay, you open the door closes, everybody's in the next room. That's super simple. And it's like, nobody would bat an eye at that.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's the kind of thing that I need to be comfortable saying. Just like, yeah, like, it doesn't have to be 110% the players all the time, especially if it's a one shot. For a more open campaign where I have several weeks, several months to be able to say, oh, the party is split. Good. Now you're all going to be really screwed. And that was your fault. I have a lot more time than that. In a one shot, it's like, okay, opens, you go through. Now we're in the scene. Who wants to cast Blight on you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely an important lesson to take along. I think there's a lot of things to learn from the way Brennan narrates in order to keep a story moving, because he does a lot of little stuff like that, right? A lot of like speaking for the characters in small ways. Just to move the story along. It's all for the effect of momentum and pacing, and it works really.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's keeping the momentum.
Yeah, exactly.
It's keeping the pace.
Yeah, and it works really well the way he does it. He's definitely developed a streamlined way of doing it tastefully. And
for sure.
And I think that's an acquired skill to be able to do that tastefully and being able to know the limits of where you can push, right?
For sure. Here's what I think it comes down to, and this is something that I think every GM knows in their heart, but I think is either too afraid to say or is like just in denial. And this is this little bit of truth. Every time you give player characters agency, momentum stops because they have to think.
Yeah.
And then they have to confer. And then they have to come to 5 different decisions. And then they make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a decision you wanted them to make anyways, most of the time. So it's like, you can skip that whole process, right? Like, there's so much where it's like, I want them to feel like they came to that decision themselves. It's like, well, they literally wouldn't know if you just said that they made that decision, they wouldn't know that they had an option to have several wrong decisions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like every GM in their heart of heart knows that every time you let players make a choice, just everything stops.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, just a masterclass in pacing and storytelling and acting, actually.
Yeah, phenomenal performances.
Just in general, just acting.
Phenomenal performances. Holy smokes. Yeah. Well, so there's the tree blight. So let's talk about the finale for a bit, because there's a lot I want to break down here. But first off, can we just talk about the fact that they spend the first hour and a half of the final session resolving 1 second of in-game time? Like, you thought combat was slow, but like the best part about it is that it's all engaging. Like, if I would have told you, like, if I would have told somebody that, like, in a vacuum, like, that sounds like that would be boring as heck, right? It's just you, what do you mean you're just sitting there watching them roll, for like,
roll for damage for 1 second of an encounter.
Yeah, well, it's like they spend like
for an entire party, and saves and damage, and
it was like maybe like an hour of rolling. Just rolling, and then just rolling
and saying yes and no.
Yeah, and saying yes or no, and are you dead? And and
you still up?
Then maybe
deuces. I have 2 hit points left. You still up? Tres. I have 3 hit points left.
And then maybe like
okay, now we're going.
Then maybe like a half hour of role play, and like all to resolve 1 second of in-game time, and like that sounds like on paper. Like, you almost say that it'd be boring, but it's like, no, it's like the most engaging thing ever, because you're on the edge of your seat the whole time, watching everybody's hit points tick down. Except for Sarah.
Who was not there.
Not there.
He was too busy being a dad.
I love how, let's also just talk about how great a character decision that was of him just noping out of there, where he was just like, okay, I understand what happened now. I got to the bottom of this. Y'all selfish. I'm going to go take care of my family. Like, that was so in character and so great, and just made everything so much more interesting that he wasn't there for the big PvP and for the big catastrophe. It's like, I thought that was a great party split.
Fantastic. You know how I would describe that scene? Imagine an entire feature film that is that one scene from Jet Li's The One, where he's kicking a bunch of SWAT guys in like stop time. Imagine a whole movie like that. That's how I would pitch that scene.
Yeah, totally.
It's just like, it's only 1 second of in-game time, but man, is it really exciting to watch, and there's a bunch of stuff happening, and it's exciting, and people die, and it's crazy.
Yeah, like, it's insane. Like, the fact that you have to do a head count by the end of that 1 second of being like, okay, who's still alive? It's just like, and you're just going around the party. It's just like dead, unconscious, barely alive, skin ripped off their face. It's like, absolutely insane. But that twist, that turn with It wasn't even really a twist. It was just a turn with Asmodeus is just like, oh man, bone chilling.
Well, that he pulled off a heel turn for a character that was already a heel.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
that's some next level stuff.
And okay, this is something I wanted to especially talk about with you, because it was that scene with the reveal with Asmodeus when he finally gets brought through the Divine Gate, and he's there on the material plane, sort of in between ish, and he's
beautiful,
and he's there with Xerxes. He has that one-on-one with Xerxes. Time stop has been cast, and
the first time stop.
Yeah. 9th level spell. Just like, oh yeah, you're just gonna throw that out there. I just want to talk with you because that was one of the things that watching that scene really made me just go, ooh, this is the kind of stuff that you and I have talked about, but have like never had the ability or the guts to be able to do, of just like the sheer level of commitment to DMing a scene with a deity. You know what I mean?
Yes. But my absolute favorite moment in that was, I think after he had cast Ceremony, I think was I think there's 2 different spells he tried to use. There was Ceremony, I think there's like Atonement or something like that, or Atonement was part of
Atonement is one of the options in the Ceremony spell.
That's what it is. Yeah, because otherwise you could have just gotten married. That would have been a different scene. Different scene entirely. He casts Atonement and is just like, maybe it's because I didn't do anything wrong. And then he just like starts beating the crap out of him. He's like, he tries to cast another spell, and before he can like even finish saying what it is, he's just like, 9th level dispel, and continues just like killing him.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that was one of those things. And I love how he narrates it mechanically, right? Yeah. Like you could just say like, your spells are ineffective here. But it's like, no, it's just like he's using gameplay terminology to express the power level of the being you're looking at.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's just like 9th level dispel magic, and then he's gonna rip you apart with his hands.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like it's such a commitment to what that scene should be. And I was loving every moment of it. But like I was also just, oh my goodness, I was in shambles. I was like, oh no. He's like,
I was living for it though. I was on Team Asmodeus that whole time.
Yeah, like you're just watching this happen, and you're just like, after all the trauma you just went through of all the character deaths, of resolving the explosion of the tree, and then you realize this whole scene starts playing out, and you realize there is nothing he can do here.
Nothing. Like there was absolutely helpless.
Asmodeus is here.
Yeah, that's like the worst Here's Johnny you can get is just tree cracks open and Asmodeus comes through. That's the thing that I love about character and not character, about player buy-in, right? Player buy-in. He knew going into that. That's the first thing that happened in the session. He's basically, I know for a fact, Brennan said, prepare yourself. The first 2 hours are just going to be death, right? Like you're all going to die. Like, as players, you done messed up. This is now the Calamity. We're going to get to that, right? So
you know
he had some,
that's the buy-in to the whole mini series too. That's what really helps with it. Yeah.
So it's like people who, you weren't even going to be there if they weren't on board for that. But this specific scene where it's like, this is the moment. This is the second of Calamity. The first second of Calamity is about to happen in this next episode, because it's the first thing that happens. The last episode ends with the sundering of the tree, and the first episode begins with it exploding. And so like, he's like, we're going like this is going to be like physically, arcanically, just like brutal on your characters, and it's like, this is going to be rough, and your characters will not come out of this in the same shape they went in. Right? And he must have gotten permission to rip Xerxes' head off several times, because I cannot imagine the amount of permissions and the kind of experience that we have now with the players that we have now to be able to do that to another player, because it would just like that is hard to do to somebody else's character. Of just say like, you have no power here, and here's how bad I want to make you feel. Here's how bad this character wants to make you feel about the decisions you made in your entire life leading up to this moment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. It's just, again, it's like, that's the kind of stuff that's like, oh, we love that. It's like being able to, it's so hard to do. It's so hard to do because it requires so much work up front and requires so much preparation on everybody's part. But like the fact that he could just go for it like that, and he did it right. He did all the work to be able to get everybody on board for a moment like that. And the like, everything was there. The buy-in, and then the setup and the description and the whole narrative, the whole setting, And yeah, just being able to, in that moment, commit to the sheer fact that you are in the presence of a deity and you are completely powerless here. Like your magic means nothing. Your hit points mean nothing. Like if he chooses to attack you, you die.
Yeah, it's like it's not even a question. It's like you get stat blocks for deity avatars. This is the deity. This is not like some cheap mundane recreation of it. Like this is the one. He has stepped into your plane because of you, and he now wants to end your day.
Yeah.
There's no save for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just, no save. No, save or die. No, nothing. You just die. It's just die.
Yeah. There's no save or die. It's just die. Just die all the time.
Yeah.
It's like 3 times in a row with resurrect cast between each die.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah, that's what I was like. I always wanted to say, like, before you even watch it, it was just counting up the number of character deaths in that first second of the Calamity. And it's just like, it's so many if you count the number of resurrections too.
It's like, okay, let's see. There are 6 players and 7 deaths.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. It's like,
not all the and also some of the characters actually survive. Some of them go unconscious, and one of them wasn't even there. Wait, so how did 7?
Oh, yeah. It's absolutely ludicrous. And it's just like, yep, he says you're going to die, you die. He says you're going to come back to life. Well, look at that, you're back to life. And there are just so many, just from the commitment of just how catastrophic that story is and all of that, there's so many great lines throughout this whole series of just things that's just like, I've never heard that at a table before. Inciting the world. I was like, never seen that happen before. I think at one point, Loquacious had to roll deception against himself.
Yeah.
It's like,
against himself.
Like, okay, never seen that happen before. Up there on the list, there's this player line that Louis says after he's been crushed for like the 5th time by Asmodeus. There's this great line he has where I'm just like, never heard that one at a table before, but it's like, these are the stakes we're at. Is he asks, does my body have agency or does my soul?
Yeah, for sure.
I was just like, well, that's a new one, but it's like, you know what, that's where we're at. And he was just like, no, it's your spirit. And he's just like, okay. And he just starts floating around as a spirit. I'm like, this is where we are, people.
Yeah. Oh man, gosh.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely insane commitment to what this story is.
Brennan knows how to turn into D&D mechanics common narrative stuff, right? Because like you're talking about like the world deception against yourself. What he's saying is just like your character is lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And your character is in denial. Basically, that's what the thing is, right? It's like your character is in denial. Are you aware of how in denial you are?
Yeah.
Roll deception against yourself. And then it's just like, and then the result of that is just like, okay, I am unaware of how in denial I am. I'm going to continue as I was, right? I'm going to proceed as planned. And then he goes on and does the thing that he did, his one secret that he had, which was super crazy. Everybody had secrets, right? And then Loquacious is coming in and just like, I don't have any secrets. You guys are all weird. And then Brennan just looks at him and goes, I know for a fact that you have secrets. And then like we find out at the very end that like he knew what happened with the first night, and he buried that a long time ago to keep his family safe.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh.
And he fired someone. Some poor reporter who got fired.
Some poor reporter who was like, I'm onto something. He's like, yes, you are. And you never should have looked.
The one, yeah. One time.
So one spunky indie reporter.
Yeah. Just up and coming investigative journalists.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, you turned over the wrong rock.
Yep. It's like, I'm sorry, you don't realize, but this is a conspiracy.
Yeah. And it's his one secret. Yeah, that was so good.
His one secret. And then I guess by the end of it he had 2. Because then he has that what he did for basically the whole party, right? Like he had that last crystal, it was some kind of like recording crystal, right? That he would use to like make basically like I think like memos as like a reporter or something like that. He has that, like he like absolves the party of just like,
oh yeah,
I don't know, guilt or just like somewhere out in the world is that crystal could have survived. And it's just like, we know the names of the people who are directly involved in the Calamity, their exact roles and what happened and how they tried to stop it. But it's like, man,
It's out there.
All because of a failed deception against himself.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a number of things like that. People have been talking about too about, and they talked about in the roundtable that the orb that she sent to Sarah's daughter, right? That contains all of the knowledge of
all
Avalier.
The knowledge of pre-Calamity Avalier.
Yeah.
Pre-Calamity Exandria, because they went everywhere.
Yeah. It was just all of their collected knowledge that city had accumulated in all of their travels and all of their research, and it's just like that's just out there somewhere. Who knows what happened to that? There are actually some pretty good fan theories about that.
The one where that's the origin of the Cobalt Soul.
Yeah, the Cobalt Soul. Yeah, and apparently, like there's a lot of evidence in favor of it because apparently, like the Cobalt Soul's logo looks a little bit like that orb, or at least it's a circle, which is just a 2-dimensional orb.
Right.
So it's like there's like a lot of little details. So it's just like, oh man, that could really work as like a really smooth retcon.
Yeah, completely retroactively smooth, slip it in, and nobody would notice.
It would totally, and given the fact that they're basically like modern detectives that root out corruption, which is what Sarah was trying to do, and it's just like, okay, maybe pass that on to his kids. Also, I love the idea of his son becoming super jacked, like Brendan suggested.
Right.
It's just huge for some reason.
For no reason at all. This is buff Aarakocra.
Yeah, I could totally see it. Yeah. So, but yeah, the absolute commitment. And it's like, I suppose that is, the crucial moment of that first second of the Calamity that they got to play out. It's like, that's what we were here for. And it got its proper emphasis. And then I was like, by the time I got to the end of that, I was like, where do we go from here? Like, why is there still 4 hours of this session left? And the rest of it is just as brilliant because they wrap up and resolve the story so well and get it epic final battles. It's incredible. And like, I love how there's just a certain point in that final session when they're going. First off, just the players were so on point. Everybody was so active and imperative too. That's a thing that can be difficult to get sometimes at the table, is getting players to feel the imperative, because sometimes players might understand narratively like the stakes, but they're not into it enough to act that way, right? To like rush when they're making their decisions
exactly, because
like, do anything like that. And it's just like when like the sheer look of panic on everybody's faces throughout a lot of this, and like the realizing the weight of every decision that they make. And when Luis as Xerxes is the last person standing and has to go around and find a way to resurrect everybody, it's just like, just well played, baller moves all around, and he pulled it off.
And then there's that moment also with the that one spell slot that was left.
Yes,
Loquacious received from
perfect setup and payoff. Great little storytelling moments like that. Oh yes, it was so good.
Here's why I think players can't really feel like the narrative imperative too often, right? And it's not a problem on the players. And like, keep in mind, listener, if you've gotten this far, this is not a fault on you or a player, or you players at your group, or anybody else that you play with or see, anything like that. This is not a problem, because I think the difference is in that moment, the characters or the players of Calamity were thinking like actors, not like players. They weren't considering the mechanics that they needed to get things done. They knew what they had to get done and were considering the scene as an actor. And as an actor, you act. And not act as in like you pretend, but like you make actions, right? Like you do things. So they were all making proactive decisions because they knew as actors, this is the scene, this is what needs to happen, and here's how we move the story forward. A player gets into that position and they can't, if they aren't trained to be an actor, if they aren't trained to move scenes forward like that, their immediate first response is pause.
Let me think.
Okay, how can I beat this scene?
Yeah.
Right? Resident Evil. Countdown starts happening for the last, get to the train and leave, right? First thing that happens, the very first time you play that, it's not anything wrong with the person who's playing the game. If they hit pause on it and go, okay, now where do I need to go first?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with that. But that's like at the table, it almost feels that way because we're in that middle ground between improv acting and actual game mechanics. And so they're interacting with more game mechanics because they're thinking like players, not like actors. But in this kind of scenario where they're in front of cameras and they're, you know, streamed to a whole thing, like they start to obviously, and they are all trained actors, so they all start thinking like actors. So they are start thinking in terms of what my character do right now, as opposed to what's the most efficient way to beat the scene.
Yeah. But
and there's nothing wrong with that if you don't do that.
Yeah.
Like there is no wrong way to play D&D. This is a show. This is entertainment. This is not D&D at your home table. This is completely different. It's an entire another game, basically. You have to keep that in mind.
Yeah. That as well, for sure. But yeah, utterly brilliant all around.
Completely brilliant.
Yeah, like that was, oh man, that was so intense. But this that was also, I think, one of the concrete takeaways that I really learned from Calamity, and especially in that last session, is not all combat has to be a combat encounter. And there's because like, well, and again, with everybody being trained actors, and with Brendan at the helm as well, who, you know, taught improv for so many years and has just such an academic understanding of it, and not just academic but intuitive understanding, where it's just like it's built into his instincts. Like he just has such a fine understanding of, and this is what I would actually call say is one of the strengths, really what you're just describing, of, you know, seeing these actual plays with trained actors is scene sense, right? Of being able to know that theatrical sense of what is the scene, when is the scene, right? Like when has it started and when is it over, and things like that, and what is the material beat that we are trying to hit here. And what I loved in that final session was that there was so much cinematic license, right? Because they knew, and like Brendan especially knew with the way he kept it moving along, what the scenes were, what the beats were that they needed to focus on, because there was so much happening that it would have been even longer than 6 hours had they stopped and played everything out, right? But there was so much that they were able to take cinematic license with and just play it out completely by description without having to roll any dice. Heck, they even did that a few sessions back with they did, you know, when they went to defend one of the batteries, and it was just like, this scene,
mark off a spell slot.
Yeah, this scene isn't material to the story we're telling. So we'll say, and you know, it's like, because it essentially would just be you mowing down hordes, right? Like it was just like these people. You're above the minions that were sent to attack this particular location. If you want to defend it, you can just mark off a spell slot, and that'll be roundabouts the resources you had to use.
Just pick a spell slot and then you figure out how you killed them.
Also, I love that comment from Sam. It's just like, I killed them with fairy fire, guys.
Yeah, it's like, I love that stuff. There's a shortcut that you've used a few times that is to like a sort of like lesser extent, that I've wanted to steal for a while, but I've never had a chance to because I haven't run a game since. But using your character's class resources or race resources, if you have any, like your character's resources, the things that you like, you know, mark off in combat or whatever, spell slots, key points, rage, right? And just say like, okay, you want to do something that is narratively very cool, but if we were to mechanically play it out, would take forever.
Yeah, and it's not that important.
Or not forever, but like, but it's like 15 minutes of game time, right? Because like then you got to start rolling and start calculating. It's like, okay, mark off a resource and then you can do that. Use a key point, you can do that. Use a rage, you can do that. Mark off a spell slot, you can do that. And like, I love that. I think you used that a couple times in Resident Roleplay. Yeah, I think you used that a couple times in Resident Roleplay, where I think you just said like if you use like an action surge, you can, you know, do something really quickly or whatever. But it's like, that's the kind of thing that I love. I love that
as well. Like it's a nice shortcut.
It's a very quick shortcut to mechanics. It's like you can interact with the mechanics, mark off a actual thing that you're going to need later, and we'll have said that the scene that you wanted to happen happened.
Yeah, and it just plays out. And yeah, it still comes at a cost so that you're not, you know, so that it does play out in your resource management, but it's but it's like, we don't need to play that scene out, you know, or we could just say that it happens. And there was a lot of that in that finale session. I think I really loved where they just, shortcutted past a lot of stuff. Like there were whole battles that were taking place with player characters that had no combat encounters associated with them. And I love that. Like there was like Nidus was out there, just like doing swashbuckling, with his mechs. I love that. And every once in a while they just cut back to him and he's just like, and just like killing.
How are you doing? I'm fine, brother.
yeah. He's just back there. He's just back there taking on an army and like don't even need to play it out. Like I love that. It's like because that's all the material it is to the story, right? To the story that they're telling. It's like all you need to know is that he's out there fighting, right?
Yeah, you're such a high level pirate with a dragon. Yeah. You're fine. We'll come back to you later.
Also, he told that dragon to shut up. That cracked me up. It's like not this time.
It's like I summoned the dragon. It's like, okay, so what you see is shut up. We don't have time. I'm leaving.
I didn't get to say my thing.
I didn't get to say my thing.
Oh yeah. Oh, such a baller move. So many great role playing decisions all throughout that whole show. Oh my goodness. But
can you imagine summoning this thing that's like this whose soul is stuck inside you, and just like every time they come out, she's like, I am bound to you by service or whatever. It's just like, just shut up and remove things. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. But like, I love those cinematic shortcuts. And that was definitely a concrete lesson I took away. Was just like, that felt like a license for me to be able to do that. Even though, because that's something I was like, I almost kind of have wanted to do for a while, but I'm like, oh man, is that kosher? But it's just like seeing it done and seeing it done so well and so smoothly, like nobody batted an eye, is like, yeah, like that. Because it made sense, and I'm like, okay, that does make sense, like we are allowed to do that. Like not every scene needs to be entirely played out mechanically, including not every action scene, not every combat scene, not everything needs mechanics to it. Because you just need to get to the scenes that are important and material to your story. You don't need to play out every little or even every big thing, just the important things.
Yeah. Just the important things, the things that are important to the story. Because even if they're big, that doesn't mean they're important. It just has to happen.
Yeah, those battles were big.
Yeah. But they weren't important.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like all we need to know is that there is somebody defending. We don't need to know how.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like the way how do you handle it? It's like you handle it all with flavor, all with role playing, right? Like he's out there, he's swinging his sword. Like you see all that, and he's like, you hear his attitude throughout the whole thing. It's like you get the picture, right? It fills that in your mind's eye automatically. You don't need to see every single roll and every single miss and hit. You just need to see he's out there swinging his sword, riding a dragon.
Yep. Especially when it comes to, I forget what it is in cinema, where it's like, once it's already been established, you can assume that that's just the case. The cinematic language. Continuity, right? Yeah, like where we know, we had that previous scene where they're fighting all the cultists, right? And it was a major demon that gets summoned, or not, but he's there.
Oh yeah, he walks through the door sideways.
He walks through the door sideways. And they had that whole fight, and we see everybody doing their combat thing with this group of cultists, right? So it's just like they got wrecked.
Yeah.
And now they're going to do that
exactly,
again.
yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. Oh, that was a great combat.
You establish. Oh, that was so good. They establish early, this is what they can do. This is the level they're at. We've seen them do this exact same thing already. So when that happens again, he's going to go out into the streets. He's going to summon his dragon. There's going to be some demons, whatever. We've already seen that. He wrecks.
Yeah, exactly.
We know that already.
And now he's got an army of mechs too. So it's like extra wreck.
Yeah. And now he's got an army of mechs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they've all got what is it, like sandwich boards from various local shops just smacking.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Can we talk about the pacing of this really quick and the structure? Because that combat you're referring to in the streets, right? Did you notice?
Right.
That was the first major combat encounter of the campaign, and it was like 2 episodes in.
I did.
Or like 3 episodes. Three episodes in.
That was the first time we actually got to see them use their class mechanics in the way that they are meant to be used. Because like there was so much stuff that was happening. Like all the characters, they knew each other, right? Because obviously they had done a lot of pre-prep and they knew each other's personalities. But there was so much stuff that was happening. That was the first time the players had seen these characters do this stuff.
Yeah.
Because it was like they were finally getting into proper combat, and they're just like, what? you can do that.
Yeah, which is where that's where D&D
man,
happens.
It's like, yeah, I'm like an 11th level sorcerer. Of course I can do this.
Yeah, and it's like because obviously they had one encounter before, but you could barely. It was not a major combat encounter at all.
Yeah.
Like it was literally just some evoker in the corner, like that just gets blasted immediately. That was nothing. So it was like that was in session 2. That major combat encounter in the streets was in session 3. 3 sessions in to get to the first major combat encounter of a story mini series this action packed. It's just like in D&D. And I was just like, I was so blown away by that. I was like, because D&D is so combat oriented, and to see so much time dedicated to just pure role play in those first couple of episodes, and for it to be just as immersive and still feel just as D&D. That's the thing, is it still felt D&D because they were still using spells in some occasions, right? In social occasions, they're still using mechanics like investigation stuff for Sarah and the stuff the Inquisitor was built to do. They were still using all these things, and so it still felt very D&D, like it was all that role play. And it wasn't until you get to that major battle in the streets that you realize, oh snap, this is our first time seeing them go to town.
Yeah. And they had minor combat encounters, like you were saying, like there's a couple of cultists, and I think there was like just like some basic stuff, right? But when the map gets brought out, that's when it's like, okay, now we're entering Dungeons and Dragons tactical gameplay. We're now counting squares. We're now measuring spell effects, and D&D is happening. This is your character's class to the full extent,
and it's epic. and it's
in episode 3.
Yeah, like oh man, like everybody was just epic when you see everybody go full bore. I mean, there's a paladin riding a friggin' griffin made of stars, starlight, and just chopping people in half with the Holy Avenger. It's like, get out of town. Everybody's 14th level. What the heck? Yeah.
Oh, speaking of that, he had that as a paladin. He has I think he cast. Was it a paladin? Was it a class feat, or was it like a spell?
Which one?
That's the inspiring leader feat.
Oh, inspiring leader feat. Yeah,
that's a class.
That's a feat.
Was that a subclass specific thing?
No,
or was that
that's just a feat. Anybody could get that as a feat.
That's just a feat. Oh, I thought that was a paladin thing. When he he cast it on the party, right? And so like they never rested the entire time. But like I love how Brennan allows him to use that as a feat on NPCs just for free. Like that's the kind of thing that I love. I've thought about that kind of stuff where it's like, your characters can do this stuff. Like we know that they can do it. It's just that whenever they do it, sometimes they get tired and they can't do it as often, or they choose not to do it as often, because if they do in a combat situation, they'll leave themselves vulnerable and then they'll die. And they know that, so they can't cast more spells than they have slots, right? That's like implied. So it's like he tries to use that inspiring leader feat again once the big battle breaks out, all the demons are loose, and he's like, okay, technically you've already used that feat once today, so the players won't get any benefits of it, but all of the NPCs will. And it's like, yes, permission.
Yeah. And I love that. And well, let's talk more about the structure of this too, because to that end, this was one thing that I almost wanted to tell you about the structure of it going into it, but I refrained from doing so. I love that structure of the fact that this takes place over a very finite period of time. It is, it's one night. It's one night.
It's 24 hours, I think, because it's like it starts off in the day.
It starts off when he wakes up because he has that vision. We start on we start with a vision, and then he wakes up. It's morning.
And then it goes into that party at night, and then it goes into the next day, or the next morning and day. Because I think that happens. I think the Calamity happens like in the morning.
Early.
Because it's right before sunrise.
Well, because he has until sunrise before the curse takes hold.
It's literally 24 hours. He
wakes up, and then dawn of the next day is when it has to end.
It's literally a 20. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
24
beautiful.
hours, a day in the life, so to speak, except not really. This was a very extraordinary day.
It's a day in the death.
Yeah, a day in the death. Yeah, well, because, and I love, because you realize, again, going in with the title Calamity, you kind of know what the story is going to be about. But you realize very early on, when I started to realize what the structure was, I was like, oh, snap. Where we are, like the Calamity hasn't happened yet, right? The first episode is day in the life. And then you realize it's like, we're going to see the Calamity happen in this, right? It's not that the Calamity is happening, has happened. We're going to see it happen. We are going to see
in real time.
In real time, we're going to see it happen. We're going to see what it was like before and what it was like after within a 24-hour period. It's like, or while it's happening, it's like they start you out on the eve of the Calamity. And that's such a potent place to set a story. Is just like, this was the last day. Here's what happened. Oh yeah, so good. So good. And I love that element of the fact that, well, people were kind of pointing out, like, there was a lot of different ways this went. There were a lot of different threads. There were a lot of different things that the characters were involved with that all could have caused or led to the Calamity. And it's interesting. People have pointed out, like, if you pay attention to like the web of different subplots that are going on, it is a bit of a Kobayashi Maru, insofar as no matter what they did, the Calamity would have still happened, right? It doesn't break canon.
Yeah, Brendan talks about that. Like he said he has like so many contingencies. Yeah,
he had contingencies upon contingencies. Like there was nothing they could have done to avoid the Calamity. That's the buy-in going in. And so then that very much shapes the narrative, because the narrative isn't how do you prevent Calamity, because the Calamity is a certainty. The narrative becomes A, how did you cause Calamity? And B, how many people can you save once it started? And those are very different narrative questions to how can you prevent Calamity? Very different narrative questions that lead to very different decisions and very different story arcs. And that was really brilliant, I thought.
And then we get that beautiful final moment where the two wizards are stuck in that bubble, just like casting this spell to try to save as many people as they possibly can. And literally like yeet a couple of primordials, not even deities, like primordials before the deities, yeet them into like another dimension. And just like, it's like, what is even happening right now? There's these two mortals about to like seriously mess with like the order of things.
Oh yeah. And and still got Sarah out to see his family by the end of it. And that was so narratively fitting that he gets to be the survivor.
Yep.
And it's just like, because he had the most to lose, and he was also just characteristically the least selfish. Really, like he was acting. His motivations were entirely selfless.
Well, because he was the only character whose job wasn't entirely based around what do you call it? Like the search for power, right? His job was keeping things in line. That was his entire job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, essentially.
And so it serves to fit the story that he's the only one who does not fall prey to all the consequences that happen from that overreach.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And that final combat encounter is so intense too. And can we... Brennan's ability to set the stakes is, I think, a big part of what makes his style work as a DM. Because on that final attack that finally does Vespin Chloris in, it's just like the whole tactic of like writing down his hit points on a piece of paper and then being like, this is how many hit points he has left. And then they like roll to see how much damage he does. And it's like, bam, throw it on the table. Yeah,
because that was the last attack.
Like
if he didn't kill him in that attack, he would have killed. No, I think it was then the spell would have.
No, he would have killed. He would have killed Loryn because he was.
No, that's what it was, because it was his turn.
Yeah, because he was. It wasn't. No, it was already his turn. The attack was on a reaction. So he. Yeah.
Was it? Is that what it was?
He was casting. He was casting.
That's right, because he got
power word kill.
And
he was getting mage slayered off of the casting of power word.
And he got double mage slayer.
Yeah.
Because it was the power word kill and
a shield.
It was power word killed. He mage slayered that one. And then on the power word kill, Pacheco tried to dispel it, and then he dispelled her dispel, and then he mage layered again on the dispel.
Yeah, it was just this cascade of mechanics that were incredibly narratively tense, And
yeah, because like Power Word Kill was in the middle.
Yeah, Power Word Kill is in the middle of this real time. It's just like you've got 6 seconds to put this guy in the ground, or everything's
Not even
over.
reactions happen faster.
Exactly.
Than that.
Yeah.
Actions are 6 seconds. Reactions are faster.
Yeah. It's like you've got seconds to put this guy in the ground.
But remember, this is the guy. The hawk, the birdie, who can see grains of sand in the night sky.
Yeah.
That's who we're messing with right here.
Oh my goodness, it's such a great moment. I was like, I aspire to have a combat moment, like a combat reaction that intense. Oh my goodness, yeah. Although this is like, and it's great. You see so much of the meta of D&D in that too, when you just realize at high levels, just like there are a lot of commonalities. It's just, and everybody's obviously playing very optimized builds. It's like you've got. Yeah, it's just counter spells upon counter spells, shields going up. I also realized that whole miniseries made me realize how much Silvery Barbs has changed the meta. Because that was everywhere.
What even is that?
That's a newer spell. That just came out from like some setting book. And it's
I've never heard of that.
It's very new.
Before.
Yeah, it has clearly completely changed the meta. Because I'm like, that spell is good and it's first level. So
yeah, I love how there's a couple things that just happened where like people, like at the table, there was that shorthand where I'm just like, who's got silvery barbs? And
can someone counterspell it?
That Xerxes had. Like anybody have counterspell? There's this one that Xerxes had. I think it was something like crazy where it's just like, oh, am I within 10 feet of Xerxes?
Oh yeah, am I within 10 feet of Xerxes? Yeah, well, it's because Paladin auras. It's a Paladin auras. It's a legitimate question. This is just like
advantage on saves. Oh, it's all good.
Well, it's a bonus. It's flat bonus actually.
Oh, okay. I thought it was yeah, right. But you have an advantage. But still, yeah. I think it's like equal to the charisma. Is that what it is?
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. But either way,
it's good stuff.
Paladins. You want one as a friend.
You really do. That really made me want to play Paladin, man.
I know. I'm excited.
Man, yeah. So I guess any last closing thoughts on Calamity?
Go watch it.
Just go watch it.
That's all I have to say. I'm probably going to go watch it again.
Honestly, yeah. This is the first time I've ever really wanted to. It is so good.
Well, also just like the early politics is so intricately weaved. I kind of have to go back and watch it or listen to it again just for like to catch names and times and dates and everything that happened. Because like I get the story, but a lot of the plot just kind of gets lost because it's so dense.
Yeah. Well, I will say, was not expecting the Per Von Soul cameo.
That's no more where I come from.
There were so many great interactions happening. Like, oh my goodness. Everybody, or all the Critical Role regulars at the table, plus me, were just like losing their minds when he stepped out. It's just like, oh snap, I didn't even think about that. We can meet these long gone NPCs.
People in their prime.
Back when he was like a humble like 7th level ranger or something.
Right. Because he became a was one of the Raven Queen shipments, right?
Yeah. They pried Vax's armor off of his body in the first campaign.
Yeah. Because I remember you told me about that, and obviously you told me the Pervon name.
Oh yeah, hilarious name.
Lives in infamy. I was so confused because I didn't know the history of that character. I thought that was just like a character for the for those campaigns in like the modern setting. So when he popped up again, I was like, is this a different Pervon? Why would he choose the same name? Okay, I think I get it. I think this is the same Pervon before he becomes a champion. Okay, got it.
Yeah, evidently still a champion, but way before he
becomes ascended champion.
Epic level. Yeah. It was super cool to see little cameos and references like that sprinkled in. But
yeah, I love how he talks about bringing in this NPC for just literally introduce that character for the reference and just to say like, yeah, these guys still here. And then as he's leaving the party, he goes, wait, and he's like, stop.
You could actually
this is a bit of canon that you shouldn't be doing.
you might actually break canon with this one. Also, I've gotta love the sheer confusion of when they're talking about him vaguely on the guest list. And it's just like he's got a wolf. It's like just a wolf? Like, can it talk? It's like, it's a wolf. It's just like, it's just so perplexed by the idea of just like a regular, it sets the stage
a
so
mundane
well.
Animal. Yeah. It reminds me of that scene in Avatar when it's just like, and he's got a bear. You mean like a owl bear?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
no, it must be like a duck bear. It's like no, it's just a bear.
It's just a bear. It's like, what the heck is that thing?
What is that? I don't understand.
Yeah.
This is the world of high fantasy people.
Yeah,
Don't you
they did
realize?
a lot to set the setting that I really appreciated. Like when they meet that high wizard at
so good.
the Ring of Gold, right? Who just like freaking basically
Zaps memories back.
zaps himself back into coherence because it's just like he's so freaking old.
He's just so ancient. What was that? The guy that Brendan said kind of like slyly during one of the roundtables, who was just like, and maybe he's a lich and is not telling anybody.
I think he was just talking about any hypothetical old.
Okay, because I was gonna
Counselor.
say that would have been
That would've
hilarious if he was like secretly a lich and he was just like drawing memories from his phylactery, just like at random, just like. Oh yes, like 1,050 years ago. Oh yes, of course.
Oh yeah, that was like little stuff like that, little details like that, just in the role play that just remind you of what the setting is and how it's different from the usual setting, and how basically borderline like utopian / dystopian it was. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is the Age of Arcanum. First session does such a great job of setting the world, and it's just like, yeah, this is different. This is peak magic D&D, and it's like, okay, now I get what we're getting into.
And all of the characters are perfectly placed so that when you do go through that round table at the beginning, getting everybody's experience, you go through the whole city from top to bottom, literally from the peak to the dungeon.
That is true, top to bottom, literally,
and everywhere in between. Yeah, from top to bottom, and it's beautiful because it's like you get to see even the dark, underground, musty, like back markets are lined with gold.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like there is nothing on this city that isn't touched by beauty and arcane of unnatural proportions.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Yeah, we could rant and rave about this for hours more, but this is already like our first supersized Hypercube episode, so
It's insane.
I think we should cut it off there. But I think in conclusion, Calamity is brilliant. Masterclass in D&D, masterclass in storytelling, period, I would argue. It is, I would highly encourage anybody who hasn't already seen it to watch it, and I hope you did before you listen to this, but yeah, I'm still learning lessons from it, looking back on it, and there is no doubt it's something that will and has changed our perspective on how to tell stories in the tabletop medium. It's a masterpiece. There's nothing short of a masterpiece, and and it gets to the core of it too, of storytelling. It never forgets that core of the emotional resonance of just like, what does this mean to the human condition? And first off, I don't know if I've ever seen that many tissues at a table, but I was certainly in tears for a lot of it in ways that I wasn't entirely expecting. It was so touching and so emotionally profound. And thematically incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is no end to the amount of good things we can say about this. Again, no joke. As somebody who is prone to hyperbole, I have personal aspirations for my GMing. This is beyond those aspirations. Like whatever I could imagine the best of my ability is, I can't even imagine touching what Brendan has done. It's so good.
Yeah. Absolute masterpiece. Like I said. Yeah.
Just go watch it. Like you just have to watch it. I'm gonna watch it again.
Yeah. All right.
I watched the roundtables twice. I know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Great material. All right. Well, I better go ahead and wind this down. But thank you all very much for listening. This has been the Hypercube podcast. This show is edited by Loryn Pacheco, mixed by Raphael Pacheco, with theme music by Mono Memory. Until next time, we'll see y'all later. God bless.
I'm gonna need you to roll a Constitution save. That's my outro for today.